The baby's cry was so small, you could have missed it. One thin sound swallowed almost completely by the blizzard. But Sung Jin-guan heard it, and something about that sound stopped a man who had never stopped for anything. 3 black SUVs, moving through the dark, Port of Seattle behind them, business handled, nothing left to say. Sung Jin-guan sat in the back seat, like he always did, quiet, still. The kind of man a room adjusts to, not the other way around. His phone was in his hand, his mind already somewhere else. Then the driver braked hard, and that sound came again. Weak, broken, barely there. Sung Jin looked up, and what he saw through that windshield, he would never be able to unsee it. A woman, standing in the middle of the road, so covered in ice she looked like the storm had been building her, piece by piece, for hours. Her coat frozen stiff, her head wrap solid, icicles hanging off her like the cold had already decided she belonged to it, and in her arms, a baby. One tiny bare foot hanging out from a thin cloth, not moving. Sung Jin's bodyguard turned around slowly. "Boss, we can't." The door was already open. The wind hit him like a wall, snow driving sideways. Temperature so far below zero, his breath died the moment it left his mouth. He walked toward her. She didn't run, didn't scream, didn't beg. She just pulled that baby tighter against her chest and looked at him with eyes that had already made peace with the worst. Sung Jin crouched down in the snow in front of her, right there, a man worth millions, on his knees in a blizzard. "Hey," his voice was low, careful. "I'm not going to hurt you." She said nothing, just looked at him. And then the baby cried again, that same small, broken sound. And something cracked open inside Sung Jin-guan that night that no amount of power, no amount of money had ever been able to touch. He reached out slowly. She flinched, but she didn't pull away. And that's the moment, right there, that changed everything. Because what Sung Jin didn't know yet was that this woman didn't end up in that blizzard by accident. She was running, and whoever she was running from was already close. Drop where you're watching from and stay with me, because this story goes somewhere nobody sees coming. He didn't take her to a hospital. He couldn't. Too many questions, too many cameras, too many people who report back to the wrong kind of people. So he did the only thing that made sense to a man like Sung Jin-guan. He took her home. Now, when I say home, I don't mean an apartment. I don't mean a nice condo with a lake view and a Ring doorbell. I mean a mansion sitting high above Lake Washington, so far from the noise of Seattle that the only thing you hear at night is the water. Floor-to-ceiling windows, Italian marble, security cameras on everything, armed guards positioned so quietly throughout the house you'd almost forget they were there. Almost. This was Sung Jin's world. On paper, he was a businessman. Shipping companies, nightclubs, import operations spread across the Pacific Northwest. Clean money, clean handshakes, clean suits. But everyone in Seattle's underworld knew the truth. Sung Jin-guan didn't just move cargo through that port. He controlled it. And he had for over a decade. His right hand, Minho, was already waiting at the door when the SUVs pulled in. Minho was the kind of guy who looked calm about everything, which honestly made him more intimidating than someone yelling. He looked at the woman, then the baby, then back at Sung Jin. "You're serious?" Sung Jin walked past him without a word. That was the answer. Now, across town, a different kind of man was also having a long night. Detective Aaron Blake, Seattle PD. He'd been quietly building a case against Sung Jin's organization for 8 months. Surveillance photos, financial trails, port manifests that didn't quite add up. He hadn't slept properly in weeks, and tonight, something on his monitor caught his attention. Sung Jin's convoy stopping on a deserted road near the port, in a blizzard, for almost 4 minutes. Blake leaned forward in his chair. "What are you doing out there?" Back at the mansion, Viola woke up gasping. Warm sheets, soft light, the baby right there beside her, chest rising and falling, breathing. She grabbed her instantly, held her so tight. For a moment, just a moment, relief washed over her face. Then she looked around the room, and the relief disappeared. She didn't know this place. She swung her legs off the bed, wincing, every muscle in her body screaming from the cold it had survived. Then the door opened. Sung-jin stepped in quietly. No sudden moves, hands visible. "You're safe, both of you." Viola went completely still. She stared at him. And here's the thing that didn't make sense. She wasn't looking at him like he was a stranger. She was looking at him like she'd been searching for his face for a very long time. Sung-jin noticed. "Do you know who I am?" She swallowed hard and didn't answer, which was its own kind of answer, because a woman with nothing who somehow knows the name of one of Seattle's most dangerous men doesn't end up in a blizzard by accident. Someone sent her there. The question is, who? Minho didn't trust her. He wasn't rude about it, wasn't aggressive. He just watched her, the way a man watches something that doesn't quite add up. And in his line of work, things that don't add up usually explode eventually. So while Viola rested, Minho got to work. Security hallway, 3 monitors, every database they had quiet access to. He started simple. Name, Viola. Nothing. Okay, maybe she gave a fake name. Fine. He ran her face through immigration records. Nothing. Refugee processing files. Nothing. Port of entry logs. Nothing. He leaned back in his chair and stared at the screen. Then he searched for the baby. Hospital birth records across Washington state. Nothing. King County Health Registry. Nothing. He pulled up every database he could think of, and this woman did not exist. Not one file, not one record, not one digital footprint anywhere in the system. He picked up his phone. "Boss, we have a problem." Sung-jin was already back in the guest room doorway when Minho's call came through. He glanced at his phone, then back at Viola. She was sitting on the edge of the bed now, baby Amara pressed against her chest, eyes scanning the room like she was calculating every exit. Survival instinct. Sung-jin had seen that look before, just never on someone this exhausted. He stepped inside slowly, pulled up a chair, sat down across from her like they were just 2 normal people about to have a normal conversation. They were not. "I need you to talk to me," he said quietly. "Who are you?" Viola said nothing. "Where did you come from?" Still nothing. Sung-jin leaned forward slightly. "There is no record of you anywhere. No passport, no refugee file, no birth record for your baby." He paused. "It's like you don't exist." Something moved across her face when he said that. Not surprise, more like confirmation, like she already knew. Then his sleeve shifted slightly as he leaned forward, and she saw it, the tattoo on his forearm. Her breath caught. She looked at it for a long moment, then looked up at him, and in the quietest voice said, "They told me you were the only one who could protect us." The room went completely still. Even the baby seemed to stop fidgeting. Minho appeared in the doorway behind Sung-jin. He'd heard it too. Sung-jin didn't move, didn't blink. His voice dropped low. "Who is they?" Viola's jaw tightened. She looked down at her baby, then back up at him, and said nothing. "Now listen, because this is the part that should be making your stomach drop right now. This woman has no name in any system, no record of even being alive. But somehow, she knows Sung-jin's tattoo. She was directed to him specifically, which means somewhere out there, someone powerful enough to stay completely invisible set this whole thing in motion, and they used a freezing woman and her baby to do it. The question isn't who sent her anymore. The question is, what do they want Sung-jin to do next? Sung-jin needed to know something. He needed to know if she was bait. Because here's the thing about being at the top of a criminal empire for over a decade. You don't get paranoid. You get careful. And right now, every instinct he had was telling him this woman was connected to something much bigger than a blizzard. So he decided to test it. Pioneer Square, middle of the day, a quiet Italian restaurant he'd used for low-key meetings before. Public enough that nobody tries anything stupid. Or so he thought. Minho wasn't happy about it. "You're taking her outside already?" "I need to see how she moves in public," Sungjin said, fixing his coat. "Who she looks for, who looks for her." Minho stared at him. "That's either genius or the worst idea you've ever had." Sungjin grabbed his keys. "Probably both." They walked in simple, low profile. Viola had on a clean coat from the mansion, baby Amara bundled up properly this time, warm, fed, looking almost peaceful. They sat near the window. Sungjin ordered coffee, watched Viola. She was trying to appear calm. Keyword, trying. Her eyes kept moving, slow sweeps across the room, checking faces, checking the door. The kind of scanning that doesn't look like fear from the outside, but Sungjin had seen enough scared people to know exactly what it was. He leaned forward slightly. "You okay?" "Fine," she said quickly. Then she looked out the window, and her entire body changed, every muscle stiff, immediate. "They found us." Her voice was barely a whisper, but it hit Sungjin like a gunshot. He followed her eyes. Outside on the street, 2 black SUVs parked across from the restaurant, engines still running, not his. Men standing outside them, dark clothing, earpieces, not looking around casually, watching, the building specifically. Sungjin's hand moved under the table instantly. He texted Minho one word, "Now." It happened fast, too fast. Gunshots cracked outside, sharp, controlled, not random spraying, precise. The restaurant erupted, chairs scraping, glasses shattering, people screaming and dropping to the floor. A woman near the back knocked over her entire table running for the kitchen. "Sir, your pasta?" "Never mind." Sungjin was already moving, one arm around Viola, baby pressed between them, head down, fast. His guards came through the side entrance within seconds, forming a pocket around them. But here's what stopped Sungjin cold for just a moment. As they moved through the chaos, he caught a glimpse of the men outside through the window. The way they moved, coordinated, silent signals, tactical positioning. These weren't street guys. These weren't even organized crime. These men moved like they'd been trained by someone with a government budget. Minho pulled up beside him as they pushed through the back exit. "Boss, who are these people?" Sungjin looked back once through the chaos, his jaw tight. "Not who I thought we were dealing with." Because gangsters shoot and run. These men were setting up a perimeter. And that changes everything. Capitol Hill. A basement safe house so off the books, even most of Sungjin's own people didn't know it existed. Concrete walls, one light, a few chairs. Not exactly the Four Seasons, but they were alive, and right now, that was enough. Minho stood by the door, arms crossed, eyes on Viola. Baby Amara was asleep finally, wrapped up on a cot in the corner, little chest rising and falling like she had no idea what kind of night this had been. Must be nice. Sungjin sat across from Viola. No table between them this time, no pretense, just 2 people and a truth that needed to come out. "I just had gunfire outside a restaurant in broad daylight," he said quietly. "My guys are asking questions I can't answer, so whatever you've been holding back," he leaned forward, "now." Viola looked at her baby for a long moment, then she closed her eyes and let it go. She wasn't a refugee. Not in the way he'd assumed. She'd been brought to Seattle 8 months ago, promised work, a new life, the kind of offer that sounds too good, but when you're desperate enough, you stop asking questions. She was held on a cargo ship docked at the port of Seattle, along with dozens of other women, moved at night, hidden in shipping containers, transferred between locations like product. Sungjin's expression didn't change, but his hands gripped the chair slightly tighter. She kept going. The apparition was massive, organized, running quietly through legitimate shipping businesses as cover. And the man running all of it? Viola stopped, looked down at Amara sleeping peacefully. "The baby's father," she said quietly. "He runs the entire operation." The room went completely silent. Minho uncrossed his arms slowly. Sungjin just stared at her. "You had a child with a man who—" "I didn't have a choice," she said, fast, firm, and the way she said it ended that line of questioning immediately. Sungjin stood up, walked a few steps, turned back. "If they find you, they kill you both. I understand that." He looked at Amara. "What I don't understand is why you came to me specifically." Viola took a breath. "Because someone told me to." "Who?" "Someone inside the operation." She met his eyes. "They slipped me a name, your name, a description of your tattoo, and one instruction." She paused. "Find him, trust only him." The silence that followed was heavy, because what that meant was that somewhere inside one of the most dangerous trafficking networks operating on the West Coast, someone was trying to burn it down from the inside. A mole. Hidden, risking everything, using a freezing woman and her newborn baby as the message. Minho looked at Sungjin slowly. "Boss." Sungjin held up one hand. He was already thinking. Because this wasn't just about protecting Viola. Someone had chosen Sungjin specifically, trusted him with something this dangerous. The question that was now keeping him very, very awake was whether that person was still alive to finish what they started. It happened without warning. 1 second, Amara was sleeping. The next, she wasn't breathing. Viola's scream brought Minho running from the hallway. Sungjin was already on his phone before he even reached the room. "I need a car. Now. Hospital. Move." No hesitation. No calculation. Just move. Swedish Medical Center. Emergency entrance. Sungjin carried her in himself. This man, who had walked into rooms that made grown men go quiet, who had never once let anyone see him rattled, ran through those ER doors like his own life depended on it. Doctors took Amara instantly. Then they were gone, behind those double doors, and Sungjin was left standing in a hospital hallway, hands empty. Hypothermia, severe malnutrition, exposure damage to her lungs. The doctor came out after 20 minutes that felt like 20 years and delivered every word carefully. "She's critical. We're doing everything we can, but the next few hours will tell us a lot." Viola pressed her hand over her mouth. Sungjin said nothing. He just walked slowly to the row of chairs outside the ICU and sat down. Head forward, elbows on knees, eyes on the floor. Minho stood nearby watching him, and quietly said nothing. Because what do you say to a man like that in a moment like that? Nothing. You say nothing. 30 minutes passed. Then Minho's radio crackled softly. He stepped away, listened, came back, leaned down toward Sungjin. "We have a problem outside." Sungjin looked up slowly. "How bad?" "Seattle PD, 4 units. They've connected you to the Pioneer Square shooting." Sungjin closed his eyes for exactly 2 seconds, then opened them. "How many exits?" "Boss," Minho's voice dropped. "If we run right now, we can still get clear, but if we wait—" "How many exits?" Minho straightened up. 3, but they're already covering 2 of them. Sungjin looked back at the ICU doors. That baby was on the other side, alone, fighting. He leaned back in the chair. "I'm not leaving." Minho stared at him. Sungjin, I'm not leaving. And that was the end of that conversation. Detective Aaron Blake pushed through the ER entrance 12 minutes later. Tall, tired-looking, the kind of man who had been chasing this case so long it had started to chase him back. He spotted Sungjin immediately, walked over slowly, sat down in the chair beside him like they were old friends, which they were not. Interesting place to find you, Blake said quietly. Sungjin didn't look at him. There's a baby in that ICU who needed help. I helped. Blake nodded slowly, let the silence sit. Then he leaned forward and lowered his voice. I'm going to tell you something, because right now I think it's the only thing keeping you breathing. Sungjin turned to look at him. Blake's jaw was tight. The men from the restaurant, we ran their prints. He paused. They're not cartel. They're not syndicate. Another pause. 2 of them came back as active federal contractors. Sungjin felt something he hadn't felt in a long time. Not fear exactly. Something colder than that. Because if the people hunting Viola had government connections, then this wasn't just a trafficking case anymore. And Sungjin Guan had just made himself their next problem. Blake didn't arrest him that night, and Sungjin didn't ask why. Some conversations happen in the space between what's said and what's understood. They both understood. For now, they needed each other. By morning, Amara was stable. Still critical, still fragile, but breathing. Viola hadn't moved from the chair outside the ICU in 6 hours. Sungjin left 2 of his guys with her and slipped out quietly. He had work to do. Mafia command room, top floor of one of Sungjin's legitimate shipping offices downtown. Clean desk, multiple screens. The kind of setup that looks like a boring logistics company from the outside and absolutely is not. Minho had been pulling footage since 3 a.m. Port of Seattle security cameras, dock manifests, night transfer logs going back 14 months. By the time Sungjin walked in, Minho already had that look on his face, the one that meant what he'd found was bad. Talk to me, Sungjin said. Minho pulled up the footage without a word. Cargo ships coming in at night, normal enough, but then shipping containers being offloaded outside of official logging hours. No manifest entries, no customs stamps, just men moving containers in the dark, fast, practiced, like they'd done it 100 times. Because they had. Minho zoomed in on one transfer. Women being moved from a container into a covered truck. Sungjin's jaw tightened. He'd heard about operations like this, knew they existed somewhere on the edges of his world. But seeing it, on his port, through his shipping lanes, that was different. How long has this been running? He asked quietly. Based on what I can pull, he exhaled, at least 2 years. 2 years, right under his nose. Then Minho clicked to a different folder. Financial trails this time, shell companies, payments routed through 3 different LLCs before disappearing. I traced the protection payments, who's been keeping this operation invisible, making sure the right inspections get canceled, the right officials look the other way. He pulled up a name, a face. Sungjin stared at the screen. He recognized him immediately. City council member, 12-year incumbent, the kind of guy who gives speeches about protecting vulnerable communities and shakes hands at charity galas. Sungjin said nothing for a long moment. Then, very quietly, he's been running cover for this entire thing. Minho nodded, which means the people hunting Viola aren't just trying to protect a trafficking ring. He looked at Sungjin. They're protecting him. And right there, the whole thing shifted. This wasn't street crime anymore. This was power, Real power, the kind that has press conferences and security details and lawyers on speed dial, the kind that makes problems disappear. Sungjin leaned back slowly. Viola had a flash drive. She didn't know what she was carrying, but he did now. That drive wasn't just evidence against a trafficking ring. It was a bomb pointed directly at City Hall. And the only person who could hand that bomb to the right people was a woman sitting in a hospital chair right now, with no name in any system, and every dangerous person in Seattle looking for her. Amara opened her eyes at 11:43 in the morning. No dramatic moment, no sudden gasp, just slowly, quietly, like she'd simply decided she wasn't done yet. The nurse came out to get Viola, and the sound that came out of that woman when she walked in and saw those little eyes open, I can't even describe it properly. It wasn't a cry, exactly. It was something deeper than that. Something that had been locked up tight through every cold hour, every terrifying night, every moment she'd held it together because she had to. It all came out at once. She pressed her forehead against Amara's tiny hand and just broke. Sungjin stood in the doorway, didn't enter, didn't speak, just let her have it. Even Minho looked away. Some moments aren't yours to watch. When Viola finally looked up, her eyes found Sungjin, and something in her face said, it was time. She told him everything. The trafficking leader, the man behind the cargo ships, the containers, the women. The man whose baby she was holding right now was her brother. Sungjin went completely still. Your brother? She nodded, jaw tight. His name was Daniel, older than her by 6 years, the one who was supposed to protect her growing up. Instead, he built an empire on selling people. Viola had found out slowly, piece by piece, the way you discover something about someone you love and keep finding reasons to explain it away, until you can't anymore. When she finally confronted him, he didn't deny it. He just looked at her calmly and told his men to get rid of her. Her own brother ordered her death like a business decision. She barely got out alive. But before she ran, she took something. She reached into the lining of her coat, the same frozen coat from that blizzard, and pulled out a small flash drive, held it out to Sungjin. Everything is on here. Names, dates, ship manifests, payment records, the council member. She paused. All of it. Sungjin looked at it for a moment, then took it carefully. I came here, Viola said quietly, because someone inside told me you were the only man powerful enough to stop him. She met his eyes. Not the police, not the FBI. You. The weight of that sat heavy in the room. Sungjin walked out into the hallway slowly, turned the flash drive over in his hand. Minho fell into step beside him. We move on this tonight? Minho asked. Sungjin didn't answer immediately, because something was pulling at the back of his mind. The men at the restaurant, federal contractors, the council member running cover for 2 years, and now this drive. If Daniel knew Viola had taken it, he wouldn't just send men after her. He'd burn everything connected to whoever was protecting her. Sungjin stopped walking. Pull up the cameras at my mother's house. Minho frowned. Your mother's? Why would... Now, Minho. Minho tapped through the feed, and his face changed. 3 black SUVs, parked 1 street over from Sungjin's mother's home, engines running, waiting. This wasn't just about Viola anymore. They were sending him a message. Touch this drive, and everyone you love pays for it. They found Daniel exactly where Minho said they would, back of a Sodo warehouse, surrounded by men who thought numbers meant safety. They didn't. The gunfight lasted less than 4 minutes. When it was over, Daniel was on his knees, zip-tied, looking up at Sungjin with an expression caught somewhere between rage and disbelief. "You have no idea what you just walked into," he said through heavy breathing. Sungjin crouched down to his level, quiet, calm, like always. "Tell me." And Daniel, almost proud of it, did. 12 cities, coordinated networks, political protection layered so deep it had taken years to build. Seattle was the smallest piece. He laughed as sirens approached. "One arrest. That's all you get." Blake's units came through every entrance simultaneously. Daniel was taken out in handcuffs, still smiling. Sungjin walked out of that warehouse slowly. And across the street, Viola was standing by a car, Amara in her arms, awake, warm, grabbing at the edge of Viola's collar with one tiny fist. Viola looked at Sungjin for a long moment. No words came. None were needed. He nodded once. She nodded back. He stood there long after the police cars cleared, flash drive in his palm, thinking about 12 cities, thinking about how many containers were moving right now, tonight, while everyone slept. How many women? How many babies? He made a decision standing there, quietly, without telling anyone. This drive wasn't going in a drawer. Here's what this story taught me, and I need you to really hear this. Evil doesn't survive because it's too powerful to stop. It survives because good people assume someone else will handle it. Sungjin could have kept driving that night. He almost did. But he didn't. And that one choice saved a life, started an investigation, exposed a network. All from one decision to not look away. So if this story moved something in you tonight, don't just let it sit there. Share this video. Subscribe to this channel. Because every story we tell here is a light on something that prefers the dark. And if you leave without subscribing, you're not just missing future stories. You're making it harder for these stories to reach the people who need to hear them most. Don't do that. Subscribe, share, and come back. Because we're just getting started.